Hello guys, Ryan from Husky Moving here, Arlington, Massachusetts. We're a full-service residential commercial moving company. We do assembly jobs, handyman jobs, light plumbing. We hang artwork, we hang TVs. We do a little bit of yard work, although I don't love it. A lot of like minor home repair, random stuff. If your house is a little bit broken, I might be able to help you out. What I want to talk to you about, I want to talk to you guys about tips, specifically taking in tips. So whenever you are quote unquote the one in charge on any given job, or you're the owner, or the crew chief, whatever you guys call your main guy in the crew, we call the crew chief. Whenever you're that guy, whenever you're the guy taking in the money on any given job, you're going to be the one collecting checks. It used to be checks. Now we're doing all Venmo, but like up until a couple of years ago, it was like, every time you did a moving job, I'd say 80% of the time, 90% of the time, it was checks at the end of the job. So you'd be the one responsible for getting the checks. And then usually what happens is one of like a couple of different things. Had someone decided that you did a good job and they wanted to tip you, more often than not, what would happen would be the customer would hand me the check and then also hand me a stack of bills. Usually when they handed me a stack of money, what they would say was either nothing and just hand me the money with what am I trying to say? Sorry, I just got off a job. I can't think of what I'm trying to say. They were letting me know that it was supposed to be distributed amongst the crew without actually saying the words distributed amongst the crew. For whatever reason, a lot of people did that. I think it's because of they didn't want to make a show of it in front of everyone. They literally just wanted to hand the money, and that was their way of being like, thank you, don't want to make a show of it, you guys figure it out. That to me means distributed equally amongst the crew. It didn't mean that to everyone, but it meant that to me. The other thing they would say some version of, please distribute this amongst the crew, thank you so much. The other thing that customers would do, some customers, although I'd say it was probably like not a huge percentage, I'd say maybe like 30, 40% of customers would go up to each individual guy and hand them money individually. That's usually what would happen. Like the three different ways that it would go down when we got tipped. The reason I'm making this video is because we had some issues at the previous company I worked with where there was some accusations that crew chiefs were taking money from the younger guys. Now, I was never on a job where I was accused of that, or I saw that happen with anyone else that I'm aware of. However, I did hear it regarding other people from multiple different sources. So, take that with a grain of salt. The other person I heard it about was a crew chief. My understanding of what I was told from various people was on any given job, if this crew chief had felt like he had done more than the other team members, there was a chance that he might take more of the money, which to me is completely arbitrary. I don't know how you would decide that. I mean, you really can't come up with a way to measure like effort. Like I could say to everyone, like when I work with people, I could be like, dude, I definitely outworked you, 100%. But like, what's the percentage of outworking did I do? Was it 52.3%? I don't fucking know. So that gets obviously very, very problematic. Now, that's kind of what I want to talk about. If you're the one in charge of getting the money, taking in the money, by default, you're in a position of like power. The younger guys, it's typically younger guys, the younger guys by default are the ones now who have to like, I don't want to say they're begging for crumbs, but like they're in a position of weakness where they have to rely on you to do the right thing by them. Now, the concept of like someone doing more work than someone else by default would be inherently assumed based on the fact that you were crew chief in the first place. The only reason you got to be a crew chief, or whatever you guys call them, would be because you typically have more years in the game, more experience, more strength, more smarts, more common sense. And like any management position on the planet, that's how you got into the role. So by default, of course, you would theoretically be asked to do more than those who didn't have that title. That's common sense, obviously. So using that as a rationale to take tips away from other people, whether you thought that it was justified or not, seems pretty misguided to me. Theoretically, the concept of you having a title of like crew chief or like owner or blah 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 would come with a higher salary to begin with, like a higher hourly wage. So the reason I bring all this up is because I always was of the opinion that, and it wasn't really an opinion, it's just what we did, at least on my cruise. Everything got split completely evenly, down the board evenly. Every job, every day, for 8 years, 9 years, however long I worked there. There wasn't one time where we split it up unevenly. The only time we would split it up unevenly is if someone came in like mid-job. So if like, there were times where like, for example, if someone had a doctor's appointment one day and he had to leave like halfway through the job, we would figure out how many hours that person worked versus how many hours I worked, and then mathematically do the tip that way. But it was all based on how many hours you worked. So it was completely fair to everyone. That's the only time we would do that. But there was never once a circumstance, not even one time was there a circumstance where we like, we're going to hold back tips from someone else, or we're going to take the tips from someone else because they didn't work hard enough or they didn't deserve it. Your job as owner, crew chief, GM, whatever the fuck you want to call yourself, your job is to be a leader. And part of being a leader is to understand that everyone on your team, from the guy who just showed up yesterday to the guy who's been there for 9 years, has a role and a job to fill. None of it has to do with you personally or the kid who just showed up yesterday. It all has to do with the customer and the customer's belongings. So what that means in any given circumstance is if I've been there for 10 years and there's a piano that needs to be moved, and Joey showed up yesterday and there's 47 pillows that need to be moved, obviously Joey is going to be in charge of moving the 47 pillows, and I'm going to be in charge of moving the piano. But that doesn't mean that moving the piano is any more or less important than moving the pianos. It all needs to be done, and it's all part of the same job. It doesn't matter. And I try to express this to people all the time when we're working. It doesn't fucking matter what you do. You just got to be doing something. The only qualm I'll ever have with you is when you're doing nothing. If you're doing something to get us closer to our goal, I don't care what it is. Baby grand piano, throw pillows, doesn't matter. We're getting closer to our goal. And the reality is I should be the one, as the older guy, the guy who's got the title, the guy who's getting the higher hourly wage, I should be the one doing the harder work all the time. Not like half the time, all the time. That's why you got in a leadership role. So you don't deserve more tips for doing your fucking job. That's not a thing. At least in my opinion. Some people disagree with me. But I want you to think very clearly if you're in the position of power where you get those the stack of bills put in your hand, which can be significant money, or if you get, for example, nowadays a lot of people doing stuff via Venmo. So I've had a lot of positions, and this will happen to you too, where someone will like get to the end of the job and they'll like, let's say for example we had 3 guys, and they get to the end of the job and they go, hey, we only have $40 worth of cash on us now, but I want to tip you guys more money. How can I do that? And I'll be like, all right, well, you can do a couple of different ways, but one of the ways you can do it is Venmo. But the point of the story is you're still in charge of the money. It's still coming into your, so what would happen is they would send it to my personal account, and then I would have to divvy it up amongst the crew equally. I've also had circumstances, and this will happen to you, where someone sent money, and this actually happens pretty frequently. Someone will send money as a tip, and then I divvy it out to everyone. Everyone gets the equal share. And then someone will send more money after the fact and be like, hey, I was thinking about it. I want to give you guys a little bit more money, and send more money. The reason I mention this video is because in any of these circumstances, all of them, you have to be completely transparent with you guys. And a lot of times, if you wanted to, you could get away with stealing from your coworkers. It would actually be pretty easy most of the time. The only way that you would ever get caught, theoretically, would be if someone mentioned it in front of the guys later on down the road. Now, the chances of that happening are pretty fucking slim, obviously. It's a lot easier for someone to send a Venmo payment and for me to just tell the guys, fucking, it was $30 less than it was, and for me to just pocket the $30. Don't get any fucking ideas when I'm telling you this. You need to conduct yourself, I would say in the moving business, more than most businesses, only because of the workload, the physical workload, and the amount of trust you need to put into someone when you're carrying a heavy item with another human being. You need to guard the trust that someone has in you with your life. Like you can do one thing and completely fuck that up. You make one dumb decision and that trust is gone forever and you'll never get it back. Ever. No matter what you do, how much time you put in, there'll always be that little sliver where they go, hey, that one time Oak stole money from me. Fucking, I wonder if he's doing it again. That will always be in the back of their mind. That's the reality of life in general, is like you can, and they say this all the time, but you can fuck up things in an instant that took you 30 years to build. So keep that in mind when you get those cash at the end of the job, or you get those Venmo payments or something. Don't ever do something that's going to give anyone any sliver whatsoever of doubt in your honesty, your ability to lead. You need, for these guys, the young guys in particular, they need to look at you as someone like a pillar of integrity. I don't know what else to call it, but like let's just call it pillar of integrity. These guys need to know that in any given instance, you're going to act honorably. You're going to do the hardest thing that needs to be done. You're going to fucking divvy up the tips the way that they should be divvied up, which is fairly. They need to know that they can trust you, right? Not only when they're carrying a piano, but also when you have their money in your grubby fucking hands that you could theoretically steal if you wanted to. You cannot do anything that's going to make these guys lose their trust in you, because I tell you, it will fucking, they'll leave. Like, and I don't mean leave like leave the company. I mean their mind and their body will leave the idea of like, this is somewhere I want to be. This is something I'm proud of. I want to do my absolute best for these people. I've seen it happen. When people think that they can't trust other people they're working with, I've seen it happen in person, and they literally and figuratively will fucking leave the building. They're out. They're like, fuck this. Why am I putting in my best? If you're not putting in your best, why the fuck am I putting in my best? You're the one who's supposed to be the leader here, and yet you're not doing your best, so why the fuck would I do my best? I'm out. And then the performance just goes in the tank. Just shit. Just bad comments, shit performance. I dropped something. I don't care. Whatever. So you need to guard that with your life. And that extends to tips and making sure everyone is doled out fairly. It extends to when anything needs to be done on any given job. As a leader, you should be the first one there doing the hardest thing every day, every job. You go in the truck and you figure out what's the thing that's given everyone the most anxiety. What's the thing that's going to be the hardest to do? And then you go over there and you do it. You pick the next strongest guy and you go over there and do it. And you get it out of the way immediately. You set a precedent. If a washing machine needs to be put on its back and dragged through dirt underneath the porch, you're the one who's going to be doing it. You're not going to send a 16-year-old to go do that. They need to know that you're going to do the worst possible shit, so that when you ask them to do bad shit, they go, hey, Oak was just on his back in the dirt doing the worst possible shit. It's really not that bad for me to be able to, have to move like a washing machine around. Something. I don't know. You don't understand my point. You get my point. Make sure all your actions are completely transparent. Make sure you're being honorable in everything you do, because your guys are watching you. They are watching you, and they're going to follow in your footsteps. And if you do wrong by them, when you're supposed to be holding them and protecting them, when you do wrong by them, they're going to fucking leave the building, and you don't want that to happen, guys. All right, I hope there was some value in this. Ryan, Husky Moving, if you need my contact information, it's in the back end of the video. Email address, our website is huskymoving.com. As always, if you found any value whatsoever, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe, guys. Thank you so much for listening.